Greetings YouTube. Today I'm going to be doing a graphics overview for Steel Division Normandy 44. I've put quite a few hours into this game already. I'm really enjoying it. I've put most of my hours into the multiplayer, although I have completed 2 of the 3 single player parts. I will be doing a full review of this game at a later stage, but for now I'm just going to be looking at the graphic settings, the optimization, and what other interface options they provide. Jumping into the graphics or video menu, as they call it, you'll see you have your standard options up here. You can switch screens, which is always nice if you have a multi-screen setup. Window, full screen, your basics, that's nice. If you're running more than one card, you can select which card you run off. I'm not running SLI, so I cannot comment on what the performance is like on that, unfortunately. Moving down into the graphic menu breakdown now, we can see that they have quite a few options, which is always nice. It's good to see developers providing a lot of options to fiddle with. One weird thing I did notice is in their description of anti-aliasing, they do say that higher values reduce aliasing, blah 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 blah. Although they only provide one option. I'm not sure if this was just a text error or if they did intend to provide more than one option, but that is something I've noticed. I'm running the game on its absolute max right now. I do not achieve 60 on my single 970, although I sit at an average of about 45 and I don't get any screen tearing whatsoever, so I don't feel the need to optimize for 60. I'm comfortable with the performance as is. It still runs very smooth. As I said, no screen tearing or any need for a more stable frame rate, and I'm happy just to let it run free at under 60. As you can see now, I'm just scrolling down slowly, and you can see that they do provide quite a lot of options. It's all very simple. They've got their descriptions. Some of their script descriptions leave a little bit to be desired. Uh, some things just don't quite see this, for example. It doesn't quite explain what this is for someone who doesn't know. That's something they could look to work on. For myself, I mean, I tend to understand what all of these options mean, but you do get people who don't, unfortunately, and it would be nice for people to know what they're fiddling with. They do have an auto setting option. Also, when you run the game for the first time, it does a benchmark and it sets the settings to what it believes you should be running on. Jumping over now to the interface, we can have a look. They do have quite a few interface options, which is nice. I'll show you how they all affect the game later on. I'm just going to change these back to how I have them to start off. Uh, as I said, I'll jump into the game in a short while and just let you see how all of these options affect the game. But that it is nice that they have these, and it is nice that you can change it to your playstyle and to how you would like to have it. So let's jump into a replay for now, just so I can talk over without having to play, and you can have a look at the game, how it runs, and how the graphics appear. Okay, now we're in the game. I'll give just a brief description of how it works. So as you can see, you kind of lay out your units at the start of the game. This is a multiplayer game with 4v4, so you'll see the different players laying out their units across the map. As you can see, you can zoom out very, very far. That's a large part of this game, is the almost complete battleground control. It's going for a very large, very realistic kind of battleground feel. And then you can just see around the edge here, you just have your kind of map and your kind of just your, I don't know what you'd call this, your documentation and stuff, just kind of a nice looking background. For anyone who's played Ruse, I suppose this is very similar. Zooming in, you can zoom all the way in. Since the game hasn't actually started, these are still just ghosts, but once the game starts, they'll appear. You can see the graphics are quite nice, considering the scale that you can zoom out to and the scale that you can zoom into. The graphics are quite pretty. Obviously, they're not going to be winning any awards, but they do look very nice. You tend to play the game at kind of this level, or I do at least. You never really are going to be zooming in this far, but it's nice to have the ability to do that. As you can see, buildings. There is a few kind of texture pop-in issues. I've found these even on very high or high settings. Currently, the textures are running on insane. And I'll show you that also in the model viewer. In the model viewer, it's also very noticeable, the texture pop-in issues. Obviously, that's an optimization issue that hopefully they will look at. Just waiting for this game to commence. It will take a couple of minutes just so I can show you what the units look like. The units are very detailed. They have gone for historical accuracy as best they can. Uh, that's the same with the balancing of this game. They've tried to balance it in terms of historical accuracy instead of kind of equality. So you'll find things like the jumbo tank will not hold up against a Tiger 2 or a King Tiger, but that is realistic. That's how it should be. So as you can see here, these units are now phased into the game, and they will once they set up, I'll just give you a look at how they all look. I'll also give you a look now at how the interface options affect the game. So let's go into that. Okay, so icon types, as you saw, each unit has an icon above them. RTS is just how they've made a default. NATO is, I believe, NATO imagery for specific units. Obviously, this is quite something to learn. It takes a lot of knowledge of NATO imagery, and it's not something I use because I have absolutely no idea what the different NATO images are. But I'll put that on now for you to have a look. See, label size, that is the label of the unit. So I'll bump this all up to large just so you can see it noticeably. So that's the label above each unit. Unit scaling. Okay, so as you can see when I was showing you the game, the units with no scaling are very small. So once you zoom out, you basically cannot see them at all. This option, it scales the units as you zoom out. So the further out you are, the bigger it will make the unit. So I'll put that onto large as well, just so you can have a look. Then other things, this is obviously self-explanatory. When you select more than one icon or more than one unit, it'll scale the icons as such. Display the front line. As you saw, that blue and red front line, it's a very important. That's probably the main part of map control, and depending on what game mode you're playing, that map control is what earns you the points in the game. HUD size, again, self-explanatory. I won't fiddle with that. Display minimap, also very self-explanatory. Close requisition menu. Okay, since we're watching a replay, you cannot see it, but up in this part of the screen here is a box that you can click on, and then it opens a menu across the top of your screen. That's where you select the units that you want to bring into the fight, and you're going to be bringing in units throughout the entire game. Now, I have this to keep always open, so once you click on the box, it's always open, and you can keep bringing in units until you click on it again, and it'll close. Otherwise, with this off, or they give more than one option, but with close automatically, you click on it, you bring one unit in, and it automatically closes. I find that very frustrating. It basically just annoys me, and I have to keep opening it. So obviously I've got it on keep always open. Keep open during deployment. As you saw now, that brief period at the start of the game is the deployment period. So it will keep that open during the deployment period and then start automatically closing it once the game has started. So let's click apply, and you can look at how this changes the game. Okay, so you can see they now have the NATO imagery. Um, so this is obviously, as I say, I don't have a very good knowledge of these NATO images. So to me, this means absolutely nothing. But for the people that do have that knowledge, obviously it's a very nice feature. So here you can see this unit scaling, scaled because I've zoomed out, and once I zoom in, it'll go back to its normal size. So that's also a nice feature if you're someone who likes to have your units very noticeable, very visible. Personally, I don't. That's why I turn the scaling off. I like to see their exact size because unit placement in this game means a lot in terms of cover and that kind of thing. So zooming in or having them small allows you to kind of place them exactly where you want to be. Although units do tend to kind of find their own cover, which is nice. They don't need complete micro. So obviously micro is a very important part of this game. Although, as I say, units will find their own cover to a certain extent in, say, a small radius like this, which kind of saves you the hassle. As you can see, the graphics are quite nice. You can see your bullet fire. You'll have flames and explosions that appear. Explosions do cause permanent damage. So as you can see here, we have a town. If a building is hit by a mortar round or something like that, that building will be permanently damaged, or to the point where it will be so damaged you can no longer place units in it. You'll get your trenches and holes where mortar rounds land. So here you can see some fire burning. So as I say, this game is very pretty. As I said, it's not going to win any graphics awards. I mean, very basic fire as you can see there, but considering the scale you're playing at, it it is very nice. You can see more of your gunfire here. Obviously, different rounds have different sizes. They do take all of that into account. It's not just a one size fits all. I'm not sure how early on there is airplay in this game. I can just kind of fast forward it to bring some planes in. Planes in this game, they operate as they would almost to a real. Okay, there's a plane in there. So they operate to a degree that they almost would in real life, although for visual reasons, they fly at a lot lower height. So obviously if they flew at their realistic height, it would be a lot harder to play with. Also due to the map size, they would fly over the map way too quickly and that kind of thing. So they do reduce the plane height, although anti-air still works as it would. So for those of you who know your World War II details, anti-air was not very effective. I've seen stats where one plane was shot down for every kind of several thousand rounds fired. Obviously, your different anti-airs had different um, different effectivity, although as a whole, anti-air is not the most effective, especially during World War II. So they do take that into account, and so even though the planes do fly at a lower height than they would realistically, anti-air is still not as effective as it would be if this was more arcadey. So as I said, their balance does go for realism. As you can see here, you've got your artillery rounds firing, which is nice. So there, and it's very nice that they model absolutely everything. So every round fired is modeled. And considering the scale again that you're playing at, that's a very nice feature to have. It's something that I suppose they could have just looked over. They could have just had the bullet lines or whatever. But no, they have modeled each and every round that is fired. So that is very nice. Maps do start off with some maps more than others do start off with battle scarring. It's meant to feel like these maps have been fought on already. It's meant to feel like it's in the middle of the Normandy invasion. So there has been fighting that has happened already. This is something interesting. Units can garrison buildings, but as you can see, they aren't visibly garrisoned. So it kind of just highlights the building in the color that you're playing at. So axes are red, allies are blue. Simple enough. You don't see any gun barrels sticking out of the window, which would have been a nice feature, but as I said, you never really play at this zoomed in scale, so it's not too important. Okay, so that's a brief overview of what the game looks like, how it runs. I'll just play it at normal speed just for a little bit, just so you can see how the FPS holds up. So usually when you're playing, you only see your units. So now I'm currently seeing double the units, and my frames are still holding at a solid 67. I mean 47, 48. And as I say, I'm not looking for 60, so that for me is perfectly fine. And as I say, no screen tearing or whatnot, so I don't feel the need to have a fixed frame rate. I'd rather just let it run free and as smooth as possible while, as I said, using the highest graphics settings available. Obviously, I'm still running at 1080. I could bump it up, but I actually haven't fiddled with that just because I'm worried that the HUD will be affected. But as you saw in the interface menu, they do have HUD scaling options. And as I said, the game is very pretty. As I say, they model absolutely everything, which is nice. Okay, so let's leave this now, and I will take you to the battle groups. This is where you put together your as I say, battle groups. So these are what I have so far. That's the 101st Airborne, easy company, of course. So here we go. You can now view each and every unit nice and close up. You can see all their modeling and texturing. Now, as I said, I have experienced texture pop-in issues in this. Let's see if we can replicate it. Okay. So as you can see, I'm not having the issue too badly. Now you can see the textures pop in very slowly, but it's not too bad. Although if I switch over to say axes, let's see if that then comes up. There we go. You can see it to a certain extent. It's not too bad. Sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's better, but it is noticeable when those textures take a couple of more seconds to load in. But as I said, this unit view is very nice. You can see all the detailing they've put on all the different units, and as I say, they've gone for as close to historical accuracy as they can. So you can have a look at your tanks. Obviously, size scaling and whatnot is also as close as they could have it while still fitting in with the game. And each unit, depending on who they are, what they are, is modeled differently. The human kind of proportions are a bit off, I've noticed. His shoulders are a bit huge, but it's really just a minor nitpick. And obviously, vehicles are a lot easier to model and texture than people are, especially at this scale. What else can I show you? They also have complete animations for everything. That's a bit wonky there, going through the textures, but oh well. But all in all, it is a very, very pretty game for the scale that you're playing at. If you were playing this close up as a first person shooter or whatnot, then this would be subpar. But considering the scale you're playing at, it is very good in my opinion. And then as I said, this is just where you put together your battle groups. You can select the units you want. You have your kind of images for each unit. They have released modding tools for this game. So while this game is still very new and there aren't any mods available, it will be interesting to see what mods do come out, especially for units, icons, that kind of thing. We might get to see a bit more variety here. These icons are a bit samey in my opinion. I mean, they tell you what you need to know. I mean, that indicates armor piercing and whatnot. So they do tell you what you need to know, although they are a little samey. So it would be nice if modders could mod in some variation, something more interesting. But for now, it's perfectly good. So yeah, I hope that gave everyone an idea of how this game looks, how this game runs. In my opinion, it's a very pretty game. It's a very enjoyable game. There are still flaws. One of my biggest gripes with the game is the multiplayer currently does not have a spectator mode. And for myself and a couple of friends who would like to host tournaments for this game, that's that's a very important feature. So until that feature is implemented, we cannot run tournaments for this game. But other than that, they have gone all out. One other gripe I will mention is the fact that obviously they focus on Normandy, so the maps are very samey. There's no snow terrain, there's no sandy terrain or anything like that. It's all Normandy, so it's pretty much trees and fields and more trees and fields. They obviously have tried to have as much variety in that as they can, but it does feel a little samey after a while. It would have been nice if they had gone for a bigger scale, if they had gone for Europe or something like that, so that we could have seen a variety of terrain and a variety of maps around the whole of Europe. But the problem with that is they then have to try and focus on more battle groups, more countries involved, and it's just a much bigger focus. So perhaps we'll see DLC that will bring in Russian factions. Perhaps we'll see DLC that brings in other maps. Although, in my opinion, because they have the Normandy focus, I doubt we'll see that. Although we'll probably see a sequel that is perhaps focused on a different part of the World War II map. So yeah, I hope that gives a decent enough breakdown for everyone. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.